in this third example of multiplication equations, we have 1/3 x equals -9. In this case, our coefficient of x is a fraction. It's 1/3. And we need to get rid of this 1/3 in order to get x by itself. So you might say, well, I know that the opposite of multiply is divide. So I'm going to divide by 1/3. Now, have you ever seen, and you may have, but have you seen a division problem with fractions written like this? Probably not, because we typically don't use the division bar even when we're dividing fractions. When we divide fractions, we have a rule that says instead of dividing, we're actually going to multiply by the reciprocal. Now that might be coming back to you from 4th or 5th grade, but that's what we do. So the reciprocal means that you flip the fraction. So you keep the 1/3, the first 1/3 the same, and then you change the division bar to multiplication, and then you take the reciprocal of the second number, which means that we're going to flip it. So it's going to become 3/1. So 1/3 times 3/1 is 3/3, and 3/3 is equal to 1. So that's how we get a coefficient of 1. So when I'm solving equations, I'm not going to use that division bar. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 1/3 is 3/1. And then what happens is my numerators and my denominators that are 3 simplify to 1. And then it's all 1, so 1 times x is just x. So x equals, now I got to remember that whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So since I multiply by 3/1 here, I need to do the same. Now 3/1 is a fraction. I'm not multiplying by a fraction, so I don't even need this because 3/1 is just 3. So I'm going to leave it as just -9 times 3, which is -27. So my final answer is x equals -27. So in this example, what I wanted you to see was that when you have a fraction as a coefficient, don't use the division bar. When you divide, you actually multiply by the reciprocal. And so it will work every time, no matter what. Just to show you real quick, this is just kind of like a side note. If you have 2/3 x equals 6, if you multiply by the reciprocal of 2/3, which means you flip it and you put 3/2, if you do that on both sides, on the left-hand side, if you have the same number in the numerator and the denominator, they simplify to 1. And here I have the same thing in the numerator and denominator again. They simplify to 1. So everything simplifies to 1, and I get 1 times x, which is just x. On the other side, I can make this a fraction by putting a 1 underneath of it. And then 6 times 3 is 18. 1 times 2 is 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. So I just wanted to show you that whenever you multiply by the reciprocal, you're going to get an answer of 1. And that's why we do that when we have multiplication equations. Okay, so I hope that helps.